Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to MetaFest. Today we're kicking it off, going into DAO's Day 2. We're going live with Nick from Hat Protocol. How you doing, Nick?
Doing great. Very excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. It's a wonderful day, 15th, so we're getting it kicked off. Would you like to please introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit more about Hat Protocol.
Sure thing. Can I share my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Should be coming through now. You see that okay?
Yes, I do.
Awesome.
Uh,
Cool.
Make sure that you make it full screen too, please.
Oh, right on. Let's see if this works. All right. How's that look?
Great. Yep, looking great.
Cool. Yeah, my name is Nintynick. I'm here on behalf of Hats Protocol, which is a protocol for creating DAO native role NFTs, and tell you a little bit about it. Just want to mention that I've been collaborating with Spencer Graham, presented yesterday on anti-capture, and some other members of our community. Really, it's a community-driven project, and we've gotten now a code commit, some financial contributions, and most importantly, like a lot of feedback and advice from a huge confluence of people. So really thankful for everyone who's contributed to this. So what are we doing here? HATS protocol is really trying to get at the core why of DAOs, which is, as Spencer kind of talked about yesterday, this idea of capture resistant governance in the anti-capture framework, and making sure that our shared resources and shared powers are not captured by bad actors. I think that's a lot of the main focus of what we're creating with DAOs in the first place. The challenge is that current models of governance really have a lot of limitations. Governance by token vote, as we all know, is really limited. And oftentimes what happens is that we centralize to become efficient. We try to find autocracy or give people authority so that we can make sure that the DAO is able to move forward. But those models are capturable at the access control and permissioning layer and also at the social layer. So we're really trying to solve that problem by bringing authority delegations explicitly on chain. So the solution, we call it DAO native role NFTs. A hat is the non-transferable NFT that grants an authority to a wearer or an account that is holding the hat. And we're using ERC 1155s for the implementation. And just as a fun kind of thing, hats in TF2, Team Fortress 2 a while ago were like this kind of really interesting inception point in the creativity and the self-expression in video games, and also microtransactions, which have vastly evolved in the last 15 years or so into a lot of what we see in NFTs now. So it's also an interesting callback to this format. And hats, obviously you have this idea of wearing many hats in a DAO, in a startup, and in a small organization. People are constantly wearing lots of different hats, and we thought it was kind of a natural progression from there. And just to give you an idea of where hats fits in as a primitive, hats protocol is a headless protocol, and we're thinking of this as just a one small piece of a very large composable and experimental ecosystem. So what you see here is, any DAO is going to use two main pieces to get their members access control, access to the various platforms, whether they're Web3 platforms or Web2 platforms. And I'll go through a list of examples and case studies later. But the first piece of it is HATS protocol, which is the token granting and revocation contracts. So right now you have existing ways of granting tokens, like launching a token, like giving people NFTs and NFT launch, ERC20, ERC721, but not a lot of revocation. And then you have a bunch of token gating tools, token-based access control, permissioning tooling, like Guild, like Lit Protocol. These tools are going to read the tokens that come out of hats like they would read any other part of on-chain state in order to grant access to various platforms. But the missing piece is a really simple, but really essential missing piece, is this ability to give the DAO the maintain the ownership and control of these authorities as they're granted to individuals, and granted to individuals in an explicit way. So we call this DAO native authority delegation. And what I'll say too is that when I say individual, we're talking really about agents. So the DAO might grant an authority to an EOA, like a person's wallet. It might grant an authority to a multisig or a pod, and it also might grant an authority to another contract. And since these are non-transferable NFTs, as in the wearers or the people who have them in their wallet can't move them to someone else, but the DAO can. The admin, which I'll explain in a second, is able to transfer and revoke. There's no concern with giving this NFT to a contract, and that opens up a whole realm of automation possibilities, which is generally a theme that I think is going to be really exciting in the next couple of years of DAOs. So how does HATS actually work? Like, what are the component pieces? So we kind of zoom into that green box of the DAO native authority delegation. You've got these 5 key components of like what is built into HATS protocol. So you have this primitive itself, which is the hat. This is the representation of the role or the authority as the ERC 1155. I've been calling it an SFT, kind of like an NFT, but it's semi-fungible. It's emitted by the HATS protocol and via the DAO's interaction with the contract. And it doesn't have to be a DAO, but generally we're focused on the use case of DAOs. Anyone could interact with this contract, and we'll publish the HATS Solidity contract once per chain. Anyone will be able to fork it and make their own version, but this contract only needs to be deployed once to be used by a wide variety of people who can all mint HATS for different DAOs and different projects. You have the concept of wearers, which I've mentioned. This is the wallet, the address that holds the NFT in it, and is actually has the role and the associated authorities in an on-chain way. You have the admin, which is the address that can create, mint, and transfer hats. So the creation of a hat is like creating the hat itself, creating the role. And then minting a hat is taking a created hat and giving it to an individual. So I might create the role of Twitter, someone who can post on Twitter, our Twitter manager, as a DAO, and then I'll mint the Twitter manager hat to Alice in our organization so that she can actually log into Twitter. And actually, we'll have to do the work on the back end to connect the access control tooling and permissioning tooling to the hat ID that we've now created and minted. The 4th piece is the oracle. So this is how revocation happens. This is an oracle is just an address that determines if the requirements of a hat are being fulfilled by the wearer. So if we grant Alice the Twitter manager hat, but we code that if there's no posts on Twitter for 2 weeks, then that hat should be revoked. The oracle is the address that is determining whether or not that criteria is fulfilled. On average, we're gonna probably set the address also to the DAO to start, and then the DAO will just vote like yes or no, is Alice fulfilling her role in the Twitter manager hat. And then, but over time, we'll progress to be probably more mechanistic. So we have the definition of what the role means and what fulfilling it successfully means. And this will make for more permissionless and autonomous DAO authority delegations. I'll explain more on that in a second as well. And the 5th piece is the conditions. Much like the oracle is determining if the requirements of the hat are being fulfilled by the wearer, it can revoke the hat. It's like you get a hat minted to you and you can have it revoked by the oracle. The conditions are actually the address that determines whether or not the hat itself remains active. So the admin created the hat, and then the conditions are what would determine what the destruction of the hat. So you're like, okay, we don't use Twitter anymore. We deleted our Twitter account. We no longer need the Twitter manager hat for anyone to wear. So the conditions would be the way that we could destroy that. And again, the address for conditions will be set to the DAO to start, but then eventually it could become increasingly mechanistic. One thing I'll mention is that when HATS protocol is initially instantiated by a DAO for the kind of set of roles that DAO is using, create a unique hat called the top hat, and that is itself worn by the DAO. The top hat is like the original admin for the whole tree of hats. And this makes sure that all of the subsequent authority delegations that are done by the DAO go back up to are ultimately owned by the top hat and the address wearing the top hat, i.e. the DAO. So to talk a little bit about humanistic to mechanistic contracts, thinking about humanistic to mechanistic as a spectrum, where humanistic is something that you have a group of people coming together to decide something. You could have it, completely off chain, or you could think of something like Coordinape as a tool where there's a group of people kind of using a tool to decide, but all intersubjectively making a decision. Versus mechanistic, like pure mechanistic, might be something like Bitcoin miners coming together and coordinating in a way that doesn't require explicit or human communication with one another, but the whole network is working via the mechanistic coordination. So we think about oracles and conditions from the previous slide as progressing along this scale. They can kind of have a variety of different implementations on the spectrum. So a mechanistic oracle would be tuned to on-chain state changes. So if the wearer makes a particular transaction on some sort of consistent basis, that would be purely a mechanistic oracle, versus a humanistic oracle is judging ad hoc by the oracle entity. So like the DAO, like I said, voting yes or no that this person has fulfilled their roles. Conditions is roughly the same thing. You can think about expiration timestamp for or some other on-chain state change as a reason why a hat would be destroyed. So we're only going to have this hat for 1 year, and at the end of the year, we'll destroy the hat. And humanistic, again, it's not going to be predefined. So to get into some of the use cases, anything where you can imagine someone plugging in to some sort of access control, permissioning tooling, a lot of really beautiful examples already people are working on with other projects. Those are the types of things that we are, you see hats used for. So we have hard powers and soft powers. Hard powers are like the actual execution authority is associated with the power, and versus a soft power might be more like a social understanding of someone's role. The hard powers would be something like a signer on a multi-sig, or like we talked about, getting Twitter access, Twitter manager hat for the DAO, Discord admin roles, using things like collaborant land and code repository admin rights. So like being able to pull code into a GitHub repo. Versus soft powers, you see things like workstream leadership. So if there's a circle or a pod or sub DAO who's focused on a particular work stream, and they were to pick someone who's going to be the leader of that work stream, then that person might get a hat that represents that. External representative, if you are trying to build partnerships with other protocols or other projects, and you want to be able to attest to the other project that you are actually a representative of the project that you claim to be, then maybe that DAO mints you a hat that shows that you're an external representative, and you can demonstrate that credential. Commitment to a task or project, to go through a more complete example on the next slide. But you can imagine staking to your commitment to get some work done for the DAO, and also delegating work from one person to another. This is an example that came up from one of our community calls. It's another really great way to think about the on-chain representation of delegation within the DAO. And then organizational interop and visibility especially is really important. So you can think about having membership in a sub DAO or a pod via something like Orca. Since these are ERC 1155s, they're like fundamentally composable and integratable with a lot of the existing tooling. Off-chain access control, we talked about Twitter, Discord, via things like Lit Protocol and Guild. Web2 role management, similar idea with Collabland. And then role visibility, we had a great call with the Sobel team on Twitter Spaces, and we've talked with the folks at Nestor. This idea that when you have a bunch of on-chain state representations of the authority delegations via hats, wallets that are holding NFTs, you could visualize and map the relationships at any time, and then also dynamically over time. So you can start to get an idea of how a DAO is evolving, who holds what authorities. As a new member, who should I go to talk about specific domains that I want to contribute to? I think that this is going to be a real level up in DAO onboarding and effectiveness for people to coordinate in a permissionless way. And to talk about this commitment to task or project idea a little bit more detail, I'm also a part of Raid Guild, where we did some work around this idea of availability and commitment staking. So Raid Guild is basically the collective of freelancers as a DAO, one of the original service DAOs. Very effective group, done over 100 projects. And what we were looking for is like, how do we scale so that we can have more people in the guild and not just have specific individuals who are understanding who is good at what skills and what their availability is. And the other side of it is making sure that when a raider comes and commits to a project, that they are accountable to getting that done. Obviously, like if someone says they're going to do some work and they don't do it, then we might not assign them work in the future, but also trying to create an incentive mechanism and a disincentive to prevent people from abandoning work. So this is, in that soft power commitment category. You might do something like staking to commit to getting some work done. So the MVP of the model that we tested was if you have some projected revenue of 1,000 DAI from a project, then you might stake 100 DAI, so 10% on your commitment to the project that gets held. Right now, we just use a multi-sig, but you could also use a later version of hats for this. And if you don't complete the work, you get slashed. Just as an aside, previous version of this presentation had staking and slashing built in directly to into the protocol. One of our community members suggested that that's an opinionated approach, and we maybe put that into a later version. So that's something that may come later, is the directly integrated staking and slashing. But for now, that would be something you would do outside of the protocol, and then represent on chain with your hats. But eventually we might make it so that you can explicitly create offers, accept offers, and then commit to specific eligibility requirements before being able to wear a hat. And then the admin of a hat seeing the offers and the eligibility of individuals before minting a hat to them. So we'll say that this is probably in hats 2.0. Or 1.0, because we're doing the v0.1 launch right now. And then just talk a little bit about oracles. So how do you know that this work got done? If you actually staked to get it done, but or you're slashing someone. Right now, you could have an individual, like other individuals who are also on the project, or say like account manager, which we call a cleric in Raid Guild. Who's going to say, yeah, this person didn't get their work done. So the oracle would be set to that individual. More likely right now is overlaps with the multi-sig implementation that we have, is like, setting the contract to a DAO, setting the contract to a multi-sig address and having them vote yes or no. And then the last piece is like, as a purely mechanistic oracle, you could have some definition of what it meant to get the work done. So instead of looking to the cleric or looking to the client or looking to the multi-sig, you say, oh, this work is completed when the following deliverables are submitted, or some metric is hit, or something like that. That's, I think, an interesting progression of where these oracles can go. So I think that's pretty much it for now. Just kind of sped through it. Happy to go back and answer any questions from you guys or from the audience. If you guys want to follow along, you can message me if you want to contribute. It's an open source project, community-driven project. Message me on Discord if you want to write some Solidity with us or review our Solidity code, or if you want to test this in your DAO. And then, yeah, follow us on Twitter. And we have a Gitcoin grant active right now, too.
Awesome. Very cool, Nick. Uh, one of the things that I really like about the hats is it's a metaphor that we've all kind of adopted and understand easily. We all wear lots of hats in our life, and giving it the actual purpose of like the duty that we have to fulfill, and kind of breaking it down into the oracle and the admin and the different conditions is like a really great way to talk about duty and how it's created and how you have to curate it, see is it still healthy, and are the conditions that this duty needs to be here still relevant. So I think, and like the
Totally.
other idea is that hats come on and off. It's not something that is going to be bolted to your head forever.
Right.
So I really like that metaphor. You were saying also something about Team Fortress. What was the the connection with Team Fortress hats?
Um, it's more the memetics of it. It's not like there's an explicit connection. This is just a screenshot from the original release of Team Fortress hats. So for those who aren't familiar, Team Fortress 2 is like a first-person shooter game, online multiplayer, where you have different classes, and each of these were representations of hats that different classes had. So you had a sniper and a spy and other ones. And the release of hats was like this big exciting thing within the Team Fortress ecosystem. It got a lot of people starting to like trade these items. It was like a kind of a precursor to NFTs, although there was not blockchain related. And built on top of that, this entire ecosystem of many different types of hats that different characters could wear. They're not giving you powers, I don't think, or anything like that. They're just self-expression, but they're kind of like collectible and the seed of microtransactions and kind of like custom wearable items in the metaverse. So it's a
So
cool connection point.
yeah, one of the key points about these hats, and for the hats that you demonstrated, is that each hat is distinct, right? It's not like a different color of the same hat, because with that character design, it's like really important that the hat and you understand what the hat is. So I think having this clear distinction of like what the role and the authority is of that hat, and like specifically you mentioned the top hat, right? So I think like people see some of these heads and they have an idea of what they are and the duty. And I think building that kind of character profile for the hats is part of telling that story. So I think that this analogy here is like a great example of the different styles of crazy hats that people can wear.
Awesome. Yeah, totally. And thank you for that. I'll mention again that the ERC 1155 implementation allows us to have many hats of the same type. So when we talked about Alice wearing the Twitter manager hat, um, maybe you put the max supply of Twitter manager hats at something like 5. So it doesn't necessarily mean that there's just only one Twitter manager hat. There could be 5 identical Twitter manager hats that are minted to different wallets. But then you can also set the max supply to 1 if you have something like the gatekeeper or some singular role that only one person can hold.
Yeah, super cool. So what kind of contracts do you guys have? Are they open contracts? Is it controlled by the hat protocol, obviously? Or how do people get new hats or step into these hats?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what we have is so you can see our GitHub repo. It's I think it's linked in our Twitter bio, or it's in our the kind of like the pinned thread on our Twitter, um, github.com/hats-protocol, I think, and you want the MVP branch, and we're doing the whole thing open source. What we'll get is a contract called hats.sol that will be published to start like Gnosis or Optimism, and then eventually like on Gnosis and Optimism and Polygon and mainnet. And the idea is that that's kind of like the hatter contract or the hat factory or something, and everyone is able to mint top hats and other hats that are controlled by the top hat for their specific use case from that contract. And there's an amazing addressing scheme that one of our community members just wrote that will allow us to just have IDs and leverage a single contract, so people don't have to waste gas on publishing their own contracts, and it will be a permissionless, composable primitive. So we're thinking of it as a headless protocol. In terms of its management, right now, Spencer and myself are kind of like doing the pre-DAO management. Of course, in order to not be hypocritical, we'll have to decentralize our own kind of authorities and then give ourselves hats from whatever this evolves into, a DAO or otherwise. But we're not there yet. We've just been working on this for about 6 or 7 weeks. And we got like, about 15 or 20 groups that are like really excited to use it. So it's very, very, very early stage for us.
Yeah, I really, really like that. I think that the label of headless with hats is a very funny context too.
Spencer is the king of puns for sure.
I think that's great for any kind of meme. And traditionally, like, hats were kind of the crazy thing because all the mercury and stuff that went into forming them and creating them. So we've got like the idea of the Mad Hatter, right? That's just kind of like ingrained into people's head. But haberdasherists and people that make hats have always kind of had a place in society because you need to look your best, and even when people go out to the track or something, right? They like to have their crazy fancy hats. So totally. I think it's wonderful to see, Web3 hats, and I think having this main contract that creates these top hats for people, and people are able to create their own kind of sub hats from that. Sounds like a great idea. So definitely looking forward to checking it out and wearing some hats.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me, y'all. Really appreciate the lineup. Amazing speakers all day and whole week, and you're amazing host, Penguin. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick. Wonderful to meet you. I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Sounds great. See you.